Polkadot. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for being here. It's a great pleasure to be here, very honored and glad that so many folks voted for us to be part of this presentation. So I'd like to talk about CESS, or Cumulus Encrypted Storage System, and how we're looking to innovate a lot of the decentralized storage capabilities so that we can move beyond just traditional archive and actually look into adopting actual commercial enterprise applications within a decentralized environment. So just looking at some of the projected trends in the storage market today, as you can see on the right-hand side, the decentralized space is very early on in terms of maturity compared to the large global storage market out there at large. But what we're going to see is over time is a massive ramping of this capability, especially as organizations innovate in this environment and allow for capabilities to really take on more commercial enterprise utilization. So if we look at some of the challenges to date with regard to decentralized storage within a blockchain environment, there have been many pain points that have been difficult to move beyond, like archive and long-term storage. So looking at some of those and how CESS has been able to innovate and address some of those systems. The first is the potential for data loss. So as you know, miners can quit, and that means the potential for the loss of data. And of course, customers can pay extra for data assurance and integrity, but typically by default, many of these past systems have been one copy stored to one data node. The next is the inefficient usage of space. With no support for space pooling and space management, and again, data saved on one node, one copy. So if you have a very large set of data to save, it means that only some of the larger nodes and environments can really participate in those opportunities, and small, medium-sized nodes kind of get left out. And then with regard to slow data retrieval, without indexing and with over-engineered proof schemes, with time-bounded cryptographic algorithms, it presents a number of challenges. So these cryptographic algorithms are very effective at what they do. There's nothing wrong with them at all. It's just that when you start applying them to a decentralized storage environment, you run into efficiency issues that could cause retrieval to take minutes, if not hours. So many of these issues have been preventing the industry from moving forward beyond long-term archive-type applications or worm-type systems, read-only, write-many type systems. So we believe we've done a number of innovations and enhancements with CESS to help to address this, to allow adoption into real-time enterprise environments. So from the perspective of high data assurance, we've taken various techniques from existing cloud service providers and applied them to decentralized storage. First, when users submit their data, 3 copies are made by default, and then those copies are processed, sliced, encrypted, and those slices are then distributed across a variety of random nodes. Also, the system periodically verifies the segments to ensure that there isn't any corruption or they're missing or lost data or anything like that. So one of our mechanisms, our proof of data recovery, data reduplication and recovery, will continuously check on those segments, and if anything's been corrupted or missing, it will automatically then copy that data segment to another existing node, since it already has 2 copies to work from. And then with regard to storage space maximization, again, we've taken some existing technologies and combined those to help address those. So as I mentioned before, data is sliced into very small blocks of equal size. And those are then encrypted, stored in random nodes. And in addition to that, the consensus miners within CESS have additional roles. So beyond just maintaining and recording a ledger of blockchain transactions, the consensus miners also maintain and record a ledger of available space across the entire network infrastructure. So providing visibility into the availability of where space is available for slices to be randomly deployed across various nodes and systems. So with regard to fast data retrieval, we've introduced an indexing layer into the architecture with two types of new miners, cache miners and retrieval miners. So we've also redesigned the proof scheme so they're no longer time-bound, but rather the data files themselves, the slices, have their own fingerprint after being encrypted. So that also helps to speed up the transactions quite a bit. And so as a result of these mechanisms, with CESS, we're able to retrieve data in terms of seconds rather than minutes or hours. And we're continuously pushing that to get to that level of being able to get down to milliseconds. So if we look at how CESS is architected, it's logically divided into three components or layers. So the first layer is that data storage layer that has that functionality I just described in terms of data processing, data storage, data display, and so on. And the second layer is the blockchain layer. This is where you find all the typical components of the blockchain, as well as new enhancements that introduces innovations in the incentivization mechanisms and consensus algorithms. And then the third layer is the application layer, which we believe will help to promote a rich ecosystem of applications, decentralized applications, and others that can leverage the underlying CESS infrastructure through API calls. So as mentioned, many decentralized systems have this issue of how do they properly address real-time applications for commercial enterprise usage. And CESS's goal is not only to meet those minimum requirement standards, but exceed them and pave the way for large-scale applications across the community, and seeking to promote and push those innovations for large-scale commercial adoption. So with these three layers combined, we have a full stack capability with a very broad ecosystem end-to-end. And as a result, we believe, CESS, we have two main value propositions. The first is to be a leader in the decentralized storage protocol market for commercial applications and development, where decentralized apps can make calls to CESS through API functionality regardless of where those decentralized apps are launched, which could be on CESS or perhaps on some other chain. Second is to deliver that rich ecosystem by supporting this effective application layer with WASM-based contracts and EVM compatibility. So as a result, we believe that we're going to provide a lot of additional value to investors, to partners, and ultimately to users. So here, we have a little further look into the layered architecture of CESS. So the bottom layer is the blockchain, where the traditional consensus algorithms, proof schemes, smart contracts, et cetera, are located. And the top layer, the application layer, which supports a variety of Web3 and Web2 services. But let's focus a little more on the middle layers, the distributed storage and content distribution layers. So looking at the storage miners as an example, they are incented in terms of providing the following proof schemes. First is the proof of data reduplication and recovery, which I mentioned, which essentially tells the network how much space the miner has. The other is the proof of space-time, which provides information about the longevity of how long that space and storage has been available. Proof of available space, which tells the network the current availability of space and works hand in hand then with the consensus miners to be able to have visibility into that space and have that, that visibility across the entire network. And then proof of flow, which describes the workflows for the storage miner. With regard to the consensus miner, not only are they tasked with reaching a consensus, but they also take on some additional tasks. First, all of the items that I described in terms of data being copied, sliced, encrypted, and all those functions reside there with the consensus miner. And all of this happens in a trusted execution environment. And based on good credit scores on behalf of the miners, some miners will be qualified to randomly be selected and participate in the consensus and finality of transactions. However, again, I want to reiterate that the consensus miner is doing more than just the traditional recording and maintaining of a ledger of those blockchain transactions. A key component is really maintaining that ledger and availability of space across the entire infrastructure, which allows for more efficient usage of space and pooling. In the content delivery layer, we have the cache and retrieval miners, and they are also rewarded based on tasks that they have themselves. So as we take a closer look at the smart space management within CESS, let's, for example, use the example of wanting to store 8 terabytes of data into the environment. With those legacy type systems, you find that you have nodes maybe that only have 1 terabyte available, like node 1, node 2 may only have 2 terabytes available, node 3 has 4 terabytes, and node 4, 8 terabytes. So in this environment, only node 4 could actually handle that requirement and that type of transaction. But with CESS, since we are taking that data, making those 3 copies, and then slicing them up into small blocks, all of the nodes have the opportunity to participate in these transactions. So you could use the analogy of maybe going to the grocery store and buying a large amount of food, coming home, and you look in the refrigerator and you realize you don't have enough space to store everything. So you start going to the process of taking your food, chopping it up, putting it into containers, and more efficiently putting it into the refrigerator. And lo and behold, not only can you store everything that you have, but at the end of it, you probably would have additional space available for additional storage. So looking at some of the different mechanisms, like I mentioned, the proof of data reduplication and recovery. This is where that mechanism is making 3 copies by default. It could be more if customers want to pay for more. This is where the data is being sliced, encrypted, and distributed across multiple nodes. You have a high assurance of data integrity, even under malicious attack conditions, because you have 3 copies of everything distributed across the infrastructure, and it's constantly checking the integrity of the availability of those data segments. With regard to random rotational selection consensus mechanism, this is in order to help promote open participation. And because of the way data is sliced and distributed, open participation is a lot more fair, and it's distributed across the entire environment. As part of the process, 11 nodes are randomly selected for these functions to be able to handle the consensus mechanisms and do that writing. The credit rating, if there are underperforming nodes that aren't meeting minimum SLAs, they can be lowered and they can be removed, and those credit ratings can be lowered. And the other thing I want to really emphasize is the energy efficiency. So blockchain, as everybody knows, has gotten a lot of black eyes in the press because of the intensity of utilization of energy, right? These mechanisms are actually lowering the computational requirements so that rather than ASICs and GPUs, you can actually get by with CPU-based systems in our environment. And then with regard to multi-format data rights confirmation, The multi-format fingerprinting extraction algorithms can address a variety of different data formats, whether we're talking about text, photographs, videos, et cetera, et cetera. Data fingerprinting information, all of that is stored in the blockchain, and the confirmation of data rights is part of that mechanism with that data-blood relationship map in place. And without going too deep into this with CESS proxy re-encryption, essentially what's going on is as users are pushing data up into CESS, some of that data could be public, some of it could be the private data. But as it goes then into CESS, it's, again, sliced, encrypted, and then as data retrieval requests occur, that decryption happens in reverse. Data is returned. The public data is obviously publicly available. The private data, only authorized users are then able to access that private data, assuming they have the keys to do that. And much of what I've talked about already addresses the interactions here, but what I really wanted to focus maybe on this slide is on the dynamic pricing and mechanisms. So as users are requesting services from CESS, they're being provided dynamic pricing in real time for the services for them to then choose, if they want to proceed forward or not. So with regard to the various use cases, the decentralized network drive is one I've been talking about and alluding to quite a bit, but a variety of other use cases exist, such as NFT trading platforms that want to be able to put digital assets in place that are much more media-rich, audio, video, et cetera. And in fact, there's an organization, Utopia, an NFT trading platform that will be launching on CESS later this year as everything goes public. Of course, there's the metaverse and gaming environments that are dependent on fast information retrieval and interactions with the network. And we fully believe that CESS will be able to achieve offering comprehensive media streaming environments in this decentralized environment. So think about some of the next generation music platforms, video platforms, all of those we believe will be able to effectively serve in CESS. So regarding miners and their incentive mechanisms, we've already kind of talked about that quite a bit. Again, I want to reiterate the roles of the consensus miners as being a critical component of being able to very efficiently manage space in the environment, with the mechanisms they use to record available space across the entire environment. And from a business development perspective, we've been very, very pleased to work with Polkadot on a number of items. Back in December, we participated in the APAC edition of the hackathon and won first place on how to build a better blockchain. We've continued to work with them in Web3.0 bootcamp and other environments. I also want to emphasize some of the work that we're doing in terms of building a storage pallet for Substrate. So CESS blockchain is based on Substrate, and we are in process of developing that storage pallet that developers, applications can use the API to call CESS and have the ability to do rapid application development through simple mechanisms. And of course, talked a lot about decentralized applications, but don't want to lose sight of the ability of CESS to also support the more traditional Web 2.0 applications, where you typically see things like medical research, manufacturing, a number of different existing type environments. And this word chart is our CESS roadmap. So where we are today in the timeline, so you don't have to actually try to read all this, we're in beta today, and we're looking to go, so we're doing a lot of work on the test net, and we're going to be going generally available on the main net coming later this year. So in the forward-looking phases, where we continue to develop our capabilities in order to be able to support real-time streaming environments for audio and video and other similar mechanisms. In the past, if you have a copy, you can also see some of the work we've done in the past to develop a lot of our mechanisms, our consensus mechanisms and proof schemes and other things like that. And with that, that is CESS in a nutshell. And I believe I have a few minutes for some Q&A if there's any interest. Yes. There's a microphone right there.
I just have two questions. The first one is what's the difference of your project from IPFS, for example? What are the main benefits? And the second one is...
So I can barely hear you. I don't know if you can get a little closer to the microphone.
I'm asking, what is the difference of your project from IPFS, for example, another storage protocol on blockchain?
Yeah, I mean, not to knock on IPFS, right? But we've taken a lot of those algorithms that I've mentioned, and as a result of those innovations, we're able to actually transact a lot faster and handle things beyond archive. So I think when you look at the combination of the mechanisms that we're currently utilizing in CESS, it's really going to advance speed overall throughout the network. Being able to take advantage of the ability to spread small slices of encrypted data, replicate those, making sure there's at least 3 copies of it. There's probably charts that we could share later that not only compare us to that, but other systems that are out there as well.
Okay, and another question: how do you solve the problem of transactional cost? Like, for example, on Ethereum, I was just reading hosting 1 megabyte of data on Ethereum cost about 17,000 in gas fees.
Yep. So gas fees, again, this kind of gets back to what I was alluding to with energy efficiency, right? With the way we've developed the architecture and infrastructure, the computational requirements are much, much lower than traditional blockchain environments. So gas fees end up being lower in our environment. I can't give you exact numbers to compare to, but one thing I do encourage is if you go to CESS.cloud, you can download our white paper and really get deep into the technology of how it works and why it's so efficient.
Thank you for your answers.
You're very welcome.
So just to clarify, and sorry if I'm asking a question that's redundant from what you explained earlier, but so when you bring CESS, you have the storage pallet for Substrate. So hypothetically speaking, this could be, from what I understand, more efficient alternative to IPFS?
I would say so.
Cool. Thank you.
Yes. And to that comment, we have had one, and I apologize. We've talked to one person out in Silicon Valley who does a lot of data centers for mining and is into NFTs and developing NFTs that are much more content rich, media, video. His experience in our discussion was trying to launch some of those NFTs on IPFS systems would literally take minutes to do so. So we believe that doing so in our environment will take much less time.
Can after your speech, or when you're done taking questions, where is it?
I'm available.
Would it be possible? Cool.
Yeah.
Just want to talk with you.
Totally.
That's my thing there.
Oh, awesome. Great. Sorry about that.
No worries. So, do you mentioned Web 2 also?
Yes.
Would that be also competitive with Web 2 traditional solutions,
Oh,
centralized
sure.
like S3?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it'll be competitive with your traditional Googles and that sort of thing. But when you think about data assurance and integrity, right, and decentralization of everything, yes, of course, the big companies have their mechanisms for backing up information and that sort of thing. But when you consider ransomware attacks, malicious attacks into centralized systems, there's a potential for hacks. There's a potential, and there have been hacks in those environments, as we've heard in the news. We believe that by doing the mechanism and decentralizing all of this and spreading it across a variety of different nodes, you avoid all those issues. Yeah. Very good. Well, we've got about 3 minutes left here.